Hi, I'm Larry Puckett, the DCC guy. Today on the DCC guy, I want to show you how to install a mobile DCC decoder in this older Athearn SW1500 blue box locomotive. Now it's called a blue box locomotive because they used to come in these blue boxes that Athearn used as sort of a trademark essentially. This is a fairly easy installation, however there are a few things that you need to be aware of to do this right, including how to separate the electrical pathway, because Athearn used the frame as one leg of the electrical pathway to power the motor, and you have to isolate the motor to prevent shorts. So I'm going to show you how to do that, and we'll go over how to install LED headlights. Sometime next week, probably on Friday, I'll do a video on using LEDs and how you can wire them up and select them, install them, all those kind of things, all the details on how to do LEDs. So, hang around for that one next week on Friday. Monday, the bonus video is going to be about stall currents, what they are, why they're important, and I'm going to go over in detail how to measure them. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is get the shell off of the model. Now basically, there's a couple of body clips here, so it's a matter of prying the side of the shell out without doing any damage. If you got fingernails, it works best. Put it under there, and that will release the clips. Fairly straightforward. Okay, so here's what the basic design of the Athearn locomotive looks like. We've got the old flat can motor that they've been using for a long time now. We've got two metal prongs that come up from the truck on the right hand side. This is forward. Okay, so these feed power from the right hand track. And this clip up here on top of the motor picks up the power coming up from the trucks and passes it to the motor brush contact here underneath of it. I'll show you the bottom side here in a minute. Also, we have this little guy here. That's the headlight bulb that came stock on these. I'm not sure what they look like now, but this is an older one. And this is one leg of the circuit sitting on this right clip, or the right track power feed. And then this one here, you can see, is connected to the chassis itself. And it's picking up power from the chassis, because like most Athearn locomotives of this era, and they're even still using it, the chassis itself forms one leg of the electrical pathway, and it's working off of the left side of the truck. So it's picking up off the left rail. So this should be positive here, the feed coming from the right rail, and the feed coming from the left rail should be negative. Okay, so what I want to do, let's start taking this apart, and when we get further down, I'll show you the chassis connection to the motor. Okay, so the first thing we want to do, let's go ahead and remove this guy here. You can see it just clips right on top of the motor. Then we want to take this apart. Let's see what we can do, because we want to retain this metal clip on the chassis itself so that we can use it for attaching the decoder feed from the chassis, or from the left rail. Okay, so let me see if I can get this apart without destroying everything else. First thing I'm going to do is, if you take this piece of plastic off, then it frees up the light bulb. That's so you can replace that light bulb. Okay, so that's out. So we've still got this left. I think this slides up. Yeah, see, that slides up, comes right out. So that is off of there. Let me get this out of the way. Okay, so we'll be able to solder our left rail pickup wire right to here, and we'll be able to solder our right rail pickup wire to one of these. And what I'm going to do, I'll tell you now, is I'm going to run a wire between this pickup and this pickup, so we're not just picking up from one truck. What I want to do though is, let's go ahead and I'll cut this off. At any rate, if you just flex it a couple of times, it'll break loose there. Okay. Okay. Now let me do this other one. Just pop that loose. Very straightforward. And what I'm going to do, let's stand these up here so we can get to them and do the soldering. Okay. Now, so we've got that prepared for the installation. Now let me go ahead and show you about this motor. Normally, this little guy here, hopefully you can see that. At any rate, that's the clip that goes on the bottom of the motor and through the chassis and holds it in place. There's usually two of these. The one that was previously in this locomotive disintegrated and is useless now. So what you want to do, I've mounted this a different way, so let me go ahead and pull it apart, and then I'll show you about taking this one out if you're doing one. So I pulled that loose. I've been using basically my good old double stick foam tape. And I'm going to go ahead and pop that out. We'll put in a new piece in a minute. Okay. And you can see here a fresh, clean metal strip cut out here. And that is to allow the motor to make contact with the chassis, because everything else is kind of painted and it wouldn't give you good electrical contact. Now, the way that the contact is made is if you look at the bottom of the motor here, you can see there's two little prongs sticking up. Now those two little prongs press against this metal strip that I showed you to make the electrical contact. So that's the way that works. So in order to guarantee that you're not going to get any electrical contact, we have to do something here, because you can short out your decoder if your motor is not completely isolated from the frame. Okay, so you have three options. One, you can take a screwdriver and just press these down flat. You can take a pair of pliers and break those off, just like I did those metal extensions from the truck. Or you can pop this little guy loose, like so. Be very careful, because there's a spring right here that holds the motor brush in place. So hold on to that. Do the same thing up top. Being careful again, don't let that spring get away from you. Okay, then up on top, I'm going to put this one in its place. Press it down. And then take the one that was up on top and put it on the bottom. Okay, like this. Okay, so this is the bottom of the motor, and now our little clips are on top. They're out of the way. They're not going to cause any trouble. You can go ahead and press them down to get them further out of the way. I like to at least do that. Okay. So that's the first part of preparing the motor. I'm going to set this aside. Now, as I said, normally this little guy would be sitting down in here like that, and the motor would clip into it. But since I only have one, I have to do something else. Okay, but the way that you would get these out is just go from the bottom, take a small Phillips head screwdriver, and push it out. And it'll pop right out of there for you. There'll be two of them, one on each side. And that way you can get the motor out of there. Now, okay, let's go ahead and replace this piece of double-sided foam tape. I'm going to take it and we'll measure it out here so that it'll fit perfectly. Okay, like that. Make sure it's going to fit now. Nope, need to take a little bit off each end. It's kind of curved anyway, so I'd like to square it off. Now let's see how it's going to work. Yeah, that's going to go in there very nicely. So I'm just going to take it and press it down into place like this. Okay, and then I'm going to pull the backing off now that it's in there. One thing, to make electrical contact, before we put this back together, I want to do some soldering, because we need to go ahead and connect one of the wires from the decoder to the clip here on the bottom and the one on the top. Okay, so the one on the top should be positive, one on the bottom should be negative. Okay, so that's orange on the top, gray on the bottom. So here's my decoder. I'm using a DH142 Digitrex decoder because I had it on hand. It's rated at 1.5 amps, continuous 2 amps, under a load, And so this is going to easily take what this motor requires. This is an old motor. It probably pulls somewhere between an amp and 1.15 amps, 1.2, something in that range when it's stalled. So you have to be very careful with a motor like this one. If I were going to run this locomotive on my layout on a regular basis, I would go ahead and replace this motor with a newer one. This is probably not a skew wound motor. It's a 5-pole motor, but I don't think it's skew wound. So it's not going to be the best performer in the world, but for the purposes of this installation, it's going to work fine. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is get everything ready to do some soldering. I've been getting my soldering stuff out here. First thing you want to do is make sure you've got a good clean surface to solder to. So, get an emery board and, clean off these places here. And we're going to make a contact here on the negative terminal. Do that one. Okay, so get those guys done. Then I've got a small round file, and it will fit right in here in this little lip on this clip. So go ahead, get that cleaned out nice and smooth. Same thing on the one on the bottom here. Get that sanded. Now if you don't have a round file, get yourself some sandpaper, 220 grit, and fold it over, and that'll fit down in that little notch. Okay, because we need to attach the motor leads here, and we need to attach the power pickup here. Okay, so the first thing I want to do then is go ahead and make this solder connection for the power pickup on the right side. I'm going to put on first the connection that I was going to make between the two. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to use, because this is a bigger joint, I'm going to go ahead and put a little paste flux on there. I don't normally use paste flux for stuff like this, but in this case, I'm going to make an exception, put some right up here, and also a little dab here on the motor. Got those done. Okay, so that's all the flux I need. It's just the smallest amount, just in case. Okay, let's go ahead and tin these guys. Okay, I'm going to pre-tin these spots here where I'm going to be attaching the wire. Okay, there. Good, good. I'm going to turn this around. Maybe you'll be able to see it better that way. There. Let me tin the ends of the wire I'm going to use for this. Okay, then I'm just going to lay that into place here. Getting into finger burning territory, so I'm going to hold this here with tweezers. Okay, so now we've got a connection that'll run atop the motor, and I've made it long enough so that, there's flex, and I can attach it to the top of the motor, okay? And it'll keep it out of the way. So that one's done. We'll do this one when we get ready to do the connection to the decoder. So let's go ahead and get that started. Okay, the first thing we need to do is go ahead and make the connection to the bottom of the motor here. And so we're going to make a connection right here. Let me go ahead and do that. That on the bottom, that's going to be the gray wire. And I'm going to go ahead and tin it, and I'll tin the motor contacts too. Okay. So I'm getting a very good solder joint almost instantly there. Okay, so those are ready to go. Now, let's go ahead and make the contact, or the connection, between the gray wire and this contact here on the bottom of the motor. Okay, put that in place, and I knocked the clip loose while I was making that connection. Get it back into place there. And sometimes you have to bend these over if you've melted a little bit of the plastic. And so what I'm going to do is, just in case, I think there was a little bit of melting. So be careful when you're doing that. But you can take this clip and just give it a little extra bend. And it'll pop right back into place, like that. Okay? So that's a good solid joint now. Okay, at this point, we can go ahead and reinstall the motor and check everything else up. Okay, so what I need to do is align the motor shaft connections like so, and drop it into place here. Get it lined up perfectly, and press it down firmly onto the double foam tape. There we go. So, you can see that's going to stay in there very well. Okay, now we're making progress. Now eventually what I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting everything up on top here and using a piece of Kapton tape to hold all the wires in place, so it's not going to be a real mess later on to work with. Okay, let's go ahead and make some solder connections. I've already tinned some of these wires just to make things go a little bit faster. Let me clip them a little shorter now. Okay, there, that's good. Okay, so the gray, or the orange one, excuse me, we're going to want to connect to, see if I can get to it here. We're going to make that connection right here to this other motor contact on top. Okay, that's done. And we want to do the red. I'm going to make the red connection to right here. This piece sticking up. Like so. So I'm going to connect the black one right up front here. Okay, so we've got the connections to the motor made, and we've got the right and left rail pickups made. So at this point, we can actually go ahead and test the decoder. I can plug it in. And the great thing about, having these JST plugs is you can do all your soldering here without any concern about frying your decoder. Okay, I've zoomed in a little bit to show you these connections that I've made. So, I've made a solder connection between the two right rail pickups and the red wire going to the decoder here, right here. I've connected the black wire here up front, okay? And I've connected the orange wire to this little lip in the top clip, and the gray wire to the one on the bottom before I installed it. So we now have the motor connections made and the power pickup connections. So I'm going to go ahead and test it. Okay, so I gave this locomotive a try, and I got it working very well. But one thing I want to point out, I could not, get it to work at first, mainly because it's been sitting in a box for probably 20 years. And the oil and grease that had accumulated as a result of, use prior to that had really grunged up the contacts between the truck and the frame itself. So if you look real close here, I'm going to hold this up. Hopefully I can get this into the camera. This dirty black spot right in here and this dirty black spot right there, those should be nice and shiny. They're not. And there's no electrical continuity between them. So what you have to do then is get yourself a Q-tip and some alcohol, clean it off as best you can. And this is old dried grease and grunge. And then get yourself a sanding stick like this one and sand it. Get it nice and clean. Get it down to the bare metal there. Okay, like this. And then do the same thing down in here. This is hard to get to, but you can do it, as you can see. And this makes all the difference in the world, because now you'll be able to get a pickup from the truck to the frame, which is part of your electrical pathway. So give that a try. If your locomotive has been in storage for any amount of time, it's going to be grungy. And this area here tends to pick up grease and oil from the truck, and it's the gears here in the truck, and it's just something that you need to be aware of. Okay, so what I want to talk about now is lighting for this locomotive, because we have a headlight and we have a light here on the rear of the cab, and we need to provide for those. And what I've done is I've installed these golden daylight LEDs that I get from China. They're off of eBay, and I'll put a link to that in the description in case you want to look it up. So they're a very tiny little LED right here, and they are extremely bright though, and they are great for this purpose. And they come with a resistor, a 1000 ohm resistor already attached, so you can just hook them right up to your decoder and you're good to go. I'll show you how bright these things are. Okay, you can see that they're a nice bright, they have sort of a yellowish glow to them, so it looks kind of golden once it's diffused through the headlight lens in the locomotive. But and this is running off of 9 volts, not 12 volts. So on the ones that I buy, the resistor end is positive, the other end is negative. You can hook that up. The negative end goes to your function lead on the decoder. The positive goes to your blue common, okay? So those are what I use. And what I do is I put, just a touch of super glue right here on the tip of that LED. I first bend it into like an L so that it's going to stay put like that. And put just a drop of super glue there. Put it behind the lens and hit it with a little drop of Zap CA accelerator, and it will dry instantly. And then I use some of this Uhu tack putty, and I use that just behind the LED to hold it in place, and it also helps to keep the light from getting back into the cab of the locomotive and other places. So this works great. You just rip off a little blob of it and spread it in there. And let me see if I can show you here. You can see this sort of a gray patch. Okay, that's the Uhu putty holding the LED in place behind the bulb, or behind the lens right here. And there's another one right here in the cab. And then I've got my wires coming out going to the decoder. Okay, so I'm going to stop on talking with the lighting at that point because I want to show you this operating. This video is getting kind of long already, and I need to be able to just keep it under, a half hour. So what I want to do, I've already attached the decoder and the wires to the top of the motor using a strip of Kapton tape. And you can get this Kapton tape from a number of different places. I'm not sure if I've seen it on Amazon, but check there. You can probably find it on eBay. Various dealers. I know that TCS sells Kapton tape rolls on their website, and I imagine some of the other dealers like Tony's Trains and Litchfield Station that sell decoders and DCC equipment probably sell this as well. So take a look there, and I use Kapton a lot. It's great for electrical purposes. So I've got everything all set up here. Everything's installed. And what I want to do now is I'm going to go off camera, put this together, and we'll get it on the track, and we'll give it a test run. Okay, let's go ahead and give it a test drive. It's going to be kind of old and sloppy at first, though. It actually runs fairly smooth for such an old locomotive. Okay, so that wraps up this video. We've got the locomotive running now, as you can see, and it's a fairly straightforward operation. So go ahead and give it a try on your layout. Next week, I'm going to have two videos. The bonus video, I think I'm going to do just on stall currents because I've been talking about those a lot lately, and I want to show you exactly, what is a stall current, why are they important, and go over in more detail how to measure them. Because it's important that you know how to do this, particularly if you get around to installing some decoders in older locomotives like this. And then I'm also going to do a video next week on LEDs and how to install them and how to wire them, the whole 9 yards of using LEDs for model railroading. So it's going to be a busy week next week. Come on back. Have a good weekend in the meantime. Bye now.